Hilchos Avodah Zarah Perek Achad Asar. The Laws of Idol Worship, Chapter 11. And today we're all going to start, and tomorrow we're going to continue, about the topic of Chukot HaGoyim. Not behaving in the ways that non-Jews behave. The way we dress and the way we act. Says the Rambam, Halacha Aleph, En holchin b'chukot ha'ovdei kochavim v'lo midamin lahen. We don't follow the customs of the idol worshippers. We don't compare ourselves to them. Lo b'malbush v'lo b'se'ar v'chayotzei bahen. Not the way we dress, not the way we do our hair, or anything similar. Shneimar, it says, v'lo telchu b'chukot hagoyim. You shall not walk in the customs and the statutes of the nations. V'neimar, it also says, u'b'chukotehem lo telechu. Do not walk in their statutes. V'neimar, it also says, hishamer lecha, be careful. Pen tinakesh achareihem, lest you stumble after them. Following in the ways of the Goyim is considered for a Jew stumbling. Hakol bi'inyan echad hu mazhir. It's all one topic that Torah is warning against in all of these verses. Shelo yidameh lahem. Bottom line is, a Jew should not be similar to the Goyim in any way. Ella, rather, yeyas Yisrael muvdal mehen. The Jew should be separate from them, distinguishable v'yadua, and he should be known b'malbusho ubishar ma'asav, in his clothing and anything else he does. Kemoshe hu muvdal mehen, the same way a Jew is clearly different from the nations, b'mada'o u'v'deotav, in the way he thinks and his character. V'chenu omer, and so it specifically says, v'avdil etchem min ha'amim, Hashem says, I have separated you from the nations. Therefore, says the Rambam, lo yilbash b'malbush ha'miyuchad lahen. We should not wear clothing that's designated for idol worshippers. V'lo yigadel tzitzit rosho kemo tzitzit rosham. And we should not grow the locks of our hair the way they grow the locks of their hair. If there's a certain goyish hairdo or hairstyle, a Jew shouldn't follow that. V'lo yigalach min hatzdadin v'yaniach hase'ar ba'emtza. You shouldn't shave on the sides and leave your hair in the middle like they do. Kemo shehen osim. V'zeh hanikra blorit. This is called the blorit. Some say this means where you shave your whole head and you leave just a little blob of hair in the back with a ponytail. Some say it's a mohawk. Some say it's just leaving hair in the middle of your head. A couple of pirushim. V'lo yigalach hase'ar mikeneged panav. You also should not shave all the hair on the front of your scalp, me'ozen la'ozen, from ear to ear, v'yaniach ha'pera mila'acharav, and leave the back. Kederech she'osin hein, the same way they do. This is called kumi in the Talmud. That's where you basically shave from here all the way around to here. The whole front is bald and the back stays. Apparently it was a noble haircut, or like aristocracy used to have those haircuts. Okay, so there you go. You see, it's an idol worshipping practice. You also shouldn't build places like the chambers of idol worship. Commentaries say it's a reference to stadiums, open air stadiums, just so that many people should be able to come in, like the idol worshippers do. They do it for idol worshipping purposes. If you do it for that type of purpose, it's forbidden. If you do it just for practical purposes, that's okay. Anybody who does any of these things or anything similar, lokeh, he gets lashes. Halacha bet, akum shaya mistaper mi Yisrael. If an idol worshipper was taking a haircut by a Jew can't support an idol worshipper in making his haircut, and therefore, kevan shehigia liblorito, karov shalosh etzbaot lechol ruach. The moment he reaches within 3 finger breadths, it's pretty far, of the blorit, where his usual haircut would be, shomet et yado. He has to release his hand. Basically, an idol worshipper has to get a haircut from a fellow idol worshipper, because a Jew will only be able to go so far before he says, I have to stop because I can't support the non-Jewish haircut. Halacha Gimel, one exception. When is a Jew allowed to make his haircut like the Goyim? Yisrael shahaya karov lemalchut. If there was a Jew who was close to the kingdom, he was a minister, he was serving in the palace, v'tzarich leshev lifnei malchayim, and he needed to sit. Part of his job was to be in front of their kings. V'hayalo gnai, and it would have looked for him embarrassing lefishalo yidmelahen, because he's not similar to them. The commentaries say he would be able to accomplish things on behalf of the Jewish people. Maybe he could even save Jewish lives, and by being distinct, not mixing in, they're not going to give him that authority. Mutar lilbosh b'malbusheihem. That's one exception where a Jew is allowed to wear their clothing, and to shave the front of his head, as they do. Other than that, there's no permission. Halacha Dalet. Now we move on to a number of different acts that are acts that were adopted by the idol worshippers. However, according to the Rambam, they have no substance. They're worthless and meaningless, but nevertheless the Torah prohibited them so that we don't copy the ways of the Avodah Zarah. Number one is called menachesh. superstition. En menachashin ka'akum. We may not be superstitious like the idol worshippers. Shene'amar, as it says, lo tenachashu, you shall not be superstitious. Ketzad hu anachash, what is considered superstition? It's interpreting events to have meaning for you. Kegon elu, like you have these people, she'omrim, they say, ho'il v'nafla piti mipi, o nafal makli miyadi, since my bread fell out of my mouth while I was eating breakfast, or my stick fell out of my hand while I was walking to shul, eini holech lemakom ploni hayom. This is a sign I am not going to walk to the place that I wanted to go today. I'm not going to go there. She'im elech, because if I go, ein chafatzai nasim. My desires are not going to get done. Because my bread, it's an unlucky sign for me. Or they say, ho'il va'avar shu'al mimini, since a fox passed me on my right side, eini yotzei mi petach beiti hayom. I'm not leaving my house today. She'im eitzei, because if I leave, yifga'eni adam ramai, a cheater is going to meet me. Foxes are known to be deceiving. So I'm going to meet somebody who's a deceiver. Also, if you have people who listen to the chirping of a bird, and they say, oh, you hear the way the bird is singing, this is going to happen, that's not going to happen. It's good to do this, bad to do that. Other people also say another type of superstition, you have to slaughter this rooster, kill him today, shekara arvit, because he called arvit either means ke'orev, like a raven, or it means he called in the evening. Unlike usual roosters who crow in the morning, he crowed in the evening. So his unusual behavior, kill the rooster. Or shchat tarnegolet zu, kill this hen, shekar'a kemo tarnegol, because she crowed like a rooster. So these are all types of nichush. Also, if a person makes a sign for himself, he sets an omen, and he says, Im yarali kach vekach, esed davar ploni. If this and this happens to me, I'm going to do this and this. Im lo yarali, if it doesn't happen, lo esed. I'm not going to do this. Eliezer Eved Avraham, like Eliezer, servant of Avraham, who made that sign. He was before the giving of the Torah, he was allowed to. Today, after the giving of the Torah, we cannot make such types of omens. Commentaries say, what happens if you make a hachlata to do a good thing? So then you have to say it only in the positive. If something good happens, I will do this. Don't say if it doesn't happen, I won't do it. Anything similar to all of these things, hakol asur, it's all forbidden. V'chol ha'oseh ma'aseh, there's the key word. Anybody who takes action, because of any of these things, lokeh, he gets lashes. You cannot take action based on your omens. Halacha hey. Misha amar, what if somebody says, Dira zu shabaniti, this house that I built, siman tov hayta, it was a good investment. It's brought me good things. It was a good sign for me. Isha zu shanasati, this woman that I married, ubehema zu shakaniti, or this animal that I bought, muvorechet hayta, it was a blessing. Me'et shakanitia asharti, from the moment I bought it, I became rich. So again, he's not doing any action. He's just pointing to something beautiful in his life. Somebody who asks a student, tell me the verse you're learning in school, like Mordechai did in the Purim story. And if the child said, the last verse we learned today was a blessing verse, Yismach v'yomar zeh siman tov, he'll be happy and he says, that's a good sign for me. Kol elu v'chayotze bahen mutar. All of these things and anything similar is permitted. Ho'il, since, v'lo kiven ma'asav, he didn't align an action because of this, v'lo nimna mila'asot, nor did he hold back from doing an action, ela asa siman zeh la'atzmo, he simply took it as a sign for himself, ledavar shekvar haya, for something which already was. And therefore, harizeh mutar, it's permitted. That's number one concept of nichush, superstition. Now we move to number two. Halacha vav ezehu kosem. Torah forbids divining, sorcery. What's considered a sorcerer? He does certain actions, so that he purposely goes into a trance, and his mind clears of everything, until he's able to predict the future. The Rambam told us already earlier that they don't predict the future exactly. There's always going to be some kind of a mistake. But he's able to clear his mind and develop his imagination so strongly that he gets insight into the future because his mind is fully clear. That's how the Rambam explains it elsewhere. V'yomar, and he says, Davar ploni atid liot o eno hoveh. This is going to happen, or it's not going to happen. O sheyomar, or he'll say, Shara'ui la'asot ken, v'hizaharu mikach. It's fitting to do this. Be careful from that. That's what the bottom line sorcerer does. Yesh min hakosmin. There are some sorcerers shemeshamshim b'chol o ba'avanim. They use sand or stones to get their trance going. V'yesh mi shegoher la'aretz. There's somebody who falls to the ground. V'yanua, and he moves around, shakes around weirdly. V'tzo'ek, and he screams. V'yesh mi, there are others, shemistakel b'mar'a shel barzel. They look into mirrors, or ba'ashashit, or into lanterns, umedamin ve'omrin, and then they start fantasizing and imagining things, and they say their future. V'yeshmi, there are other sorcerers, shenosem makel biyado. They carry a stick in their hand, v'nish'an alav umakebo, they lean on it, they bang it into the ground, ad shetipaneh machshavto medaber, till his mind clears, and then he speaks. These are all different actions. Husha Navi Omer, as the prophet says, Ami be'etzo yish'al, my nation began to ask advice from their sticks, from their wood, umaklo yagidlo, and his stick tells them the future. So, these are all different types of acts. If you do any of these, you go into the category of kosem. It says the Rambam halacha zayin, asur liksom vilish ol kosem. It's forbidden both to be the sorcerer and to be the one asking advice from the sorcerer. But the biblical prohibition is only for the sorcerer himself. Ela sha'asho'el kosem, the one who asks advice from the sorcerer, makinoto makat mardut, we give him rabbinic lashes. Aval kosem atzmo, the sorcerer himself, im asam ma'asem nikol elu v'chayotzei bahen, if he did an action, not just spoke words. If he did something from any of these above actions or anything similar, lokeh, he gets lashes. Shne'amar, as it says, lo yimatzei b'cha, it may not be found amongst you Jewish people, ma'avir beno, anybody who passes his son through fire, and also kosem ksamim, a person who does acts of sorcery through the tools of sorcery. Halacha chet, ezehu me'onen. What is considered a me'onen? Me'onen means a diviner of times. Elu notnei itim. They give times. It's not really an astrologist because they say they use astrology, but the point that their conclusions always are around time, not about different deeds. They say she'omrim ba'itzdagninut. They say through astrology, yom ploni tov, yom ploni ra. This is a good day. This is a bad day. Yom ploni ra'ui la'asot bo malacha plonit. This day is good to do this work. Shana plonit, o chodesh ploni, ra ledavar ploni. This year or this month is bad for certain things. And here halacha tet asur le'onen afal pi shelo asa ma'aseh. Unlike the other acts of magic, it's forbidden to divine times, even if you don't do any action. Ela hodia otan hakzavim. Rather, you just notified the lies, sha'ksilim medamin she'en divrei emet b'divrei chachamim, which the fools believe to be true and words of wisdom. B'chol ha'oseh mipnei ha'itzdagninut. Anybody who acts on these astrological predictions, b'kiven melachto o halichato, and he aligns his work or his walking, his trip, be'oto ha'et shekav'u hovrei shamayim, at that time which was set by the stargazers, by the people who look into the heavens, harei zeh lokeh, you get lashes. Shene'emar, as it says, lo te'onenu, you may not be a diviner of times. And that means following somebody who says something, following his instructions and doing action. V'chein, says the Rambam, ha'ochez et ha'enayim, somebody who does illusions. He holds your eyes. Umedameh b'fnei haroim she'osem ma'aseh timahon, and he makes as if those who are watching him are seeing something wondrous. This is the operative word, wondrous. Something completely beyond nature. V'hu lo asa, and he didn't do it. Harei zeh bichlal me'onen v'lokeh. It's included in the diviner of times, and he gets lashes. Many commentaries believe that even today's illusionists are also included in this prohibition, and they have to make a notice before they start their show that what they're doing is only illusions. Of course, if you're a non-Jew, no problem, but if you're a Jew, then it's not so simple to practice illusions. Others commentaries say, we're going to see later in the chapter, that there's a difference if you're doing regular acts that are just cool because the way you're doing it, or you're actually doing ma'aseh timahon, which is like wondrous acts, not like illogical or otherworldly acts. Halacha yud, ezehu chover. What is considered a charmer? Torah says you cannot be chover chaver. You cannot say charms. What does that mean? Zeh shemedaber bidvarim she'enan leshon am ve'en lahem inyan. It's when you talk gibberish. You say things that are not any language of the people. They have no meaning. Umalel dato bisichluto, and in your foolishness you believe she'otan hadvarim mo'ilin, that the words or the incantations that I'm saying actually have benefit. Ad shehe nomrin, to the point that they say sheha omer kach v'kach al hanachash or al ha'akrav. If you say abracadabra, right, on a snake or on a scorpion, eno mazik, now you have charmed the snake or the scorpion, and then they're not going to damage you anymore. Veha omer kach v'kach al ha'ish, or if you say babalaba hocus pocus about a certain guy, eno nizok, you're not going to get damaged. So that's the basic element of a chover. He's saying random words to calm the powers or the effects of damaging people or animals. Umehen, some of these charmers, ochez biyado be'et shemedaber, while he speaks, he holds in his hand mafteach or sela, lechayotze bidvarim ha'ilu, a key or a rock, or anything like it, hakol asur. All of these acts are forbidden. Ha'chover atzmo, if the charmer himself, sha'achaz biyado klum, held anything in his hand, o sha'asa ma'aseh im diburo, or did something along with his speech, afilu her'a be'etzba'o, even just pointing with his finger, That's called an action. That's enough to get you lashes. As it says, Lo yimatzei b'cha v'gomer v'chover chaver. It cannot be found amongst you a charmer of charms. Aval but im amar dvarim bilvad. If he only said words, v'lo henid lo etzba v'lo rosh, and he didn't move his finger or his head, v'lo hayabi adok klum, he wasn't holding anything in his hand. V'chen adam, and also the person who's the subject of the charms. She'amar alav hachabar otan hakolot, about which the person, the charmer, said those voices, those sounds. V'hu yoshev lefanav, and this guy is sitting there, all devoted and beautiful, umedameh, thinking sheyesh lo bazeh hana'ah, that he gets benefit from this. Makin oto makat mardut. So these people who didn't do any action, we just give them rabbinic lashes. Because he took part in this foolishness of the charmer. And all of these sounds and all of these names, hamishunim, hamechuarim, the weird names, the disgusting names, lo yareo v'gam hetev enotam. The Rambam says they don't do bad and they also bring no good. Because the Rambam was of the opinion that all these things are complete bogus. Halacha Yud Aleph, there's one exception. When are we allowed to say incantations? Mishen neshacho akrav or nachash. If somebody was already bitten by a scorpion or a snake, and we're worried that he's going to go a little crazy and won't be able to hold his own, mutar lilchosh al mekom hanishicha. We're allowed to whisper over the place of the bite. Some commentaries say you're literally making it up, as if you're just saying things, but just to calm him. V'afilu b'Shabbat, even on Shabbos, kedei liyashev da'ato lechazek libo, just to calm him and to strengthen his resolve. You need a little of power you need some strength to get through when you're being poisoned. So you could make up a little bit of encouragement, of incantation. Even though you know it doesn't help you at all. Since he's in danger, the sages allowed it, so his mind doesn't go crazy. Halacha Yud Bet. Halochesh al hamaka v'koreh pasuk min haTorah. What if you get a wound and you start whispering over the wound verses from the Torah? V'chein hakoreh al hatinok shelo yiba'et. Or you read verses of Torah to a child so he shouldn't be scared. V'hamaniach sefer Torah or tefillin al hakatan b'shvil sheyishan. Or you put a Torah scroll or tefillin on a child so he falls asleep. Says the Rambam, this is completely out of the question. Lo dai lahem. It's not enough shehem bichlal menachashim b'chobrim, that you would go into the category of being superstitious and a charmer. Ela shehem bichlal hakofrim b'Torah. You're actually considered a denier of Torah. Shehen osin divrei Torah refuat guf. They're converting words of Torah into healing for the body. Ve'enan ela refuat nefashot, and they're only there to heal the soul. Shenemar v'yu chayim lenafshecha. You can't misuse Torah for your own body. They're supposed to be life for your soul. But that's only if you use Torah in a reactive way. Someone has a problem, you're trying to solve a problem with verses of Torah or using a Torah. Aval habari. But if you have a healthy person, shekarab sukinu mizmor mitehillim, who reads verses and he reads tehillim, kedesh tagen alav schut kriyatan, so that the merit of reading the Psalms should shield him. V'yinatzel mitzarot u'minazakim, and in the future he'll be saved from problems and from damages. Harezeh mutar, that's permitted. Halacha Yud Gimel, ezehu doresh al hamitim. What's considered a necromancer? A person who inquires from the dead. Zeh mar'ivet atzmo, he starves himself. V'holech v'lan bevet hakvarot, and he goes and sleeps in the cemetery. Kedei sheyavo met b'chalam, with the express purpose that a dead person should come to him in a dream. V'yodio ma shesha'al alav, and give him some information about what he asked. V'yesh achirim, there are other necromancers. Shehem lovshim malbushim yiduim, they put on certain clothing. Ve'omrim dvarim, they say certain words. Umaktirin ktoret yidua, and they bring certain incense. V'yishenim levadan, and they sleep alone. Kadeshi avomet ploni v'yisaperimo b'chalom. So a certain dead person comes to him and talks to him in his dream. Klalo shel davar, the rule governing this is as follows: Kol ha'oseh kadeshi yavo hamet v'yodio. If you do any action with the intent that the dead person should come and talk to you, lokeh, you get lashes. Shne'emar, it says, lo yimatzei b'cha ma'avir v'gomer. It cannot be found amongst you a person who brings his children to the fire, v'doresh el hametim, and a necromancer, a person who inquires from the dead. Halacha Yudalit. Asur lish'ol, bal ov or bal yidoni. In addition to the practice of ov and yidoni, which we saw in chapter 6, you also can't be the one to go and consult them. You can't ask a person who practices ov or yidoni to tell you the future about yourself. Shne'emar, it says, lo yimatzei b'cha ma'avir, cannot be found amongst you a person who passes his children through fire, v'sho'el ov v'yidoni, and a person who asks, who consults with the ov or yidoni. Nimtzei lamed, it turns out you learn. Shebal ov v'yidoni atzman biskila. The person who practices ov and yidoni themselves gets stoned. V'hanish albahan, a person who inquires from them, v'azhara, only gets a warning since he did no action. U'makinoto makat mardut, and the rabbis can give him rabbinic lashes. However, if he then did take action, he aligned his deeds, and he did according to what they told him, lokeh, he gets lashes. Halakha tetvav, hamechashef, a person who does black magic, chayav skila, is obligated, is liable for stoning. V'hu, again provided, she'asa ma'asek shafim, he did an act of black magic. But if a person performs an illusion, v'hu, which means he appears to have done, but he did not do, he only gets rabbinic lashes. Because the prohibition which is said about the black magician, is included in the verse which says it should not be found, the whole list of people, including the black magician. The lav shenitan la'azharat mitat beidinhu, and it's a prohibition which also can carry with it a potential capital punishment. The ein lokin alav, and therefore you don't get lashes for it. Shene'emar mechashefa lo techayev, for it says a black magician you should not allow to live. This is a principle in halacha. If a prohibition carries the capital punishment, possibly, then you can never get lashes for it. So the person who did black magic, if he only did an illusion, we can't give him anything more than rabbinic lashes. Now, earlier we said that if you do an illusion, you're included in me'onen. It's a different prohibition. So what's the Rambam saying over here? It's only rabbinic. Some commentaries say it's two counts. You get a count of me'onen and a count of mechashef. Other commentaries say, like I said before, that the other illusionist is doing wondrous acts. Ma'aseh timahon. This person is doing just regular illusions, just using sleight of hand to do cool stuff. That's not a biblical prohibition, that's only rabbinic. Now the Rambam gives his general position on all of these things. Halakha tetzayin udvarim ha'elu kulan. All of these matters, divrei sheker v'chazavhin, are complete lies and complete falsehood. In other words, the Rambam is saying, everything I said before is actually impossible. It's not possible to communicate with the dead. It's not possible to see the stars and get the future. All of this stuff is complete bogus. When the Torah prohibits the acts, the Torah is prohibiting those acts that the goyim associated with these powers. But in actuality, they have no meaning. It was the tools which were used by the early idol worshippers to fool, to mislead all the nations of the world, so they followed them. It's not fitting for a Jew, which are sages, wise sages, to be drawn after these vanities, not to imagine at all that they have any benefit. As it says, there is no superstition amongst Jacob or sorcery amongst Israel. The Ne'emar, it also says, those nations that you are going to inherit them, they listen to diviners of times and to sorcerers. But you are not so. The Rambam goes even further and says, anybody who believes, in these things, you believe that they have power, and you actually think that they're true and they're wisdom. Just that Torah prohibited them, but they actually have substance. It says the Rambam, I feel bad for you. You're just a fool. You're lacking knowledge. You may as well be counted amongst those women and children who don't have a complete developed mature mind. Those who do have wisdom, and those who are complete in their knowledge, they know with clear proof that all of these things which Torah prohibited, they aren't even at their core wisdom. They're nothingness and completely void. After which those people who lack knowledge were drawn after. They abandoned all ways of truth just because of their pursuit of these garbage wisdoms. And therefore Torah says, when it warns against all these nothingnesses, you should be sincere, be complete with Hashem your God, because really everything else is completely non-existent. Other commentaries argue with the Rambam. They say it actually does have substance. The astrology is a real thing. The Rebbe writes that perhaps we can say that by the time the Rambam existed, it definitely did not exist. The Rambam's times. The only argument was about earlier times in history, but by Matan Torah, did it exist then? So it's a smaller argument. But the bottom line is that certainly today, there's no such substance to all of these Maaseh Kishuf.